Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is October 11th, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update, and we are going to be taking a look at just how successful Putin's missile strikes and all-out attack went. And we're going to ask ourselves, just who is left backing Vladimir Putin? Let's get into it. Okay, first off, of course, we are going to take a look at the tactical map, and the only big change, really, is a small clarification. Initially, there were reports that south of Bakhmut, Russian forces had made it to the barrier of this Ozaryankov, but in fact, they didn't. It was their attack was even less effective than they initially reported. Other than that, the only other update is that some of the villages in this area here are status unknown. It's not clear who exactly is in control of them. But it's important to note that what didn't happen is sometimes just as significant. Despite Russia's efforts to throw a large portion of its remaining precision weapons, cruise missiles, at what they, I guess, had hoped was maybe key command and control infrastructure of Kiev, and launch an all-out assault on their operational objective here, Bakhmut. There hasn't been any change to the tactical map. Ukrainian forces seem to have held, and are probably not all that impacted by strikes on their command and control areas in Kiev. And this might be a function, a little bit of the difference between a Russian military that oftentimes these Soviet-style militaries, when they no longer receive orders, will literally freeze in place pending receipt of new orders, whereas a Western-trained military, there's just an expectation that squad leaders, platoon leaders, company commanders, battalion commanders, in the absence of orders, do their best to take the fight to the enemy and maintain the operational momentum. So that's probably something that we saw here, where I would imagine that if they experienced any disruptions at all, commanders on the ground probably had a very, very good idea of what they were expected to be doing, preparing for new offensives, digging in fighting positions, whatever that may be. So again, a testament to and a reflection of perhaps the difference in styles of warfare, styles of command in Western versus Soviet legacy militaries. But what I really wanted to talk about is Vladimir Putin's friends, or lack thereof. This is something that, of course, the Institute for the Study of War has been great at covering. But, one of the things they point out is that they, first off, have released some details about exactly what was launched in this barrage of missile strikes on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. It's actually over 20 cities, 84 total cruise missiles and 24 drone strikes. 13 of which were carried out with Iranian-made drones. Ukrainian Air Force shot down 43 cruise missiles, 10 drones, and 3 other drones of unknown disposition. Russian forces launched their missiles from 10 strategic bombers, as well as a short-range ballistic missile system and 6 missile carriers in the Black Sea. So I hope you guys see, when you see these numbers, you realize that this is actually a significant portion of probably their remaining precision strike weapons. What I think is worth noting is that it looks like they targeted primarily what they call critical infrastructure facilities. These would be energy facilities, telecommunications, things like that are essential to life functioning. They also end up hitting 4 high-rise buildings, a bunch of residential buildings, and a school. This is obviously terrible. No one wants to see civilian infrastructure be attacked like this. Depending on the details of such an attack and how deliberate it was, it could be construed as a war crime. But what I think is more important is that a significant amount of Russia's very, very limited precision strike capability and offensive drone capability was just expended to destroy residential houses, apartment complexes, a school. This is militarily insignificant. And when we look at the context of why this sort of thing happened, we see that it's likely a move by Putin in response to the attack on the Crimean Bridge. And why is this important? Well, Putin is a realist. He is a calculator, right? You don't become head of a major European country, an autocrat, and possibly the richest person on earth in terms of, since Russia is functionally his personal piggy bank, you don't get there by getting emotional and lashing out. That's just not something that happens to people at this level. They are so precisely calculated. And the reality is that if the best response to the destruction of the Crimean Bridge was to do nothing, Putin would do nothing. You can be sure of that. So then why did he not do nothing? Why did he take his very limited amount of precision weapons and instead of using them to support his troops that are falling back on at least two fronts, use them to attack civilian targets that have no military significance and had no military impact on the actual battlefield? We just looked. The battlefield is the same. The reason is because Putin is catering to Russian nationalist and hawkish figures, right? When you're a dictator, you got to understand that you don't need the support of the entire population. Think of Saddam Hussein, who came from a Sunni minority in Iraq. Only about a third of the population was Sunni at all. And so, but as long as he had their loyalty, that was sufficient to maintain control of the country. And Putin is doing a similar calculus. All autocratic dictators do this. And he's realizing that he only needs this minority of Russians who are ultra-nationalists to really, really adore and believe in what he's doing. As soon as the ultra-nationalists start to hate him, which they've been more publicly critical of him at a level that he's not really seen before. Once they turn on him, then Putin has no support base to speak of anywhere. Right? The cosmopolitan, more liberal Russians of almost any bend absolutely revile him. They can't get out of the country fast enough. But when you look at these super hawks, what they want that they demanded was that Putin retaliate for this strike on the bridge. And that is why he decided it was somehow worth his extremely expensive precision weapons that, remember, because of sanctions, he can't really make more of, throwing those at what we're seeing as also sensitive civilian infrastructure targets in Ukraine. And the real losers here, are, frankly, Russian soldiers and Russian commanders on the ground. Because what would the operational commander of those fronts do with 86 cruise missile strikes, right? Would they use it to disrupt Ukrainian efforts to prepare for another round of offensives? Would they use them to cover retreating forces to a more secure location, buying their forces time to dig in and stabilize, right? There's a lot of things they could do with those weapon systems. And instead, they use them to flatten playgrounds. This is just a testament to me that Putin is he's running out of friends. And you know, when we think about this, right, we look at, for example, even some of Russia's closest allies like Belarus. At the end of the day, Belarusian troops are not fighting in this conflict. Belarus maybe he's making statements in favor of Putin, but he's not actually contributing to the war effort. He's allowing, the president of Belarus is allowing Russian forces to operate out of his country. Some ground forces appear to be maybe mobilized forces might be staging in Belarus, maybe conducting some training there. But that's a really low degree of support in terms of an international effort. Remember, even in Iraq, a wildly unpopular war, the U.S. was still able to get actual boots on the ground armed forces from its closest ally, the UK, other countries like Poland. And so it's important to note that even such strong allies of Russia aren't really backing this effort. Certainly countries like China, for example, China has actually respected Russian sanctions against Russia entirely. China, you notice there's no Chinese-made weapons in Russian hands, none. And the only thing that China is doing is buying oil from Russia at a steep discount to help prop up its own economy. And again, if we think about it as realists, if you're the president of Belarus or especially China, the last thing in the world these guys want is Russia to win decisively in Ukraine, because then Russia can pivot back. It can serve as a regional rival to China with its military still intact. It can pivot from Ukraine to focus on controlling Belarus more strongly. Both of these countries want to see Russia's relative power level decrease. And that's why even Russia's friends aren't really supporting it. They're sort of rooting for Russia to burn a lot of its military and international capital on this. Anyway, guys, I hope you got something out of this. I hope, if nothing else, you understand the calculus, the political calculus that Putin is doing, and understand that while he is an ultra-nationalist, what we call a chauvinist, someone who believes in Russian superiority, he's not irrational. And he's calculating his moves very carefully, even if they don't appear to make any military sense. And a lot of these are still, I think, the signs of, a lot of desperation. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. As always, of course, if you want to get access to uncensored combat videos that I break down, stuff that YouTube won't let me show you, and they've definitely been cracking down, you want to become a member of the Patreon. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier patrons, you guys make this whole thing possible. Link is in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.